Is this thing on? It is. All right, I'm Shoot DaRock, and welcome back to another video talking ball. And here today we have the second to last college football playoff rankings revealed. So I'm going to be going through, giving my takes on how each team's ranked, and then talking about how the conference championship games this weekend can affect the rankings, who, still has a chance to get in, who's out that I think should be in, who's in that I think should be out, and all that good stuff. So make sure to drop your takes on the rankings down here in the comments. And while you're down there, make sure to like the video, subscribe to the channel, and let's get into it. All right, so here we are, the final college football playoff rankings, or the second to last, but the final one of the regular season, where everyone has played, 12 games now, so we're all set. We'll kind of go through these rankings here first, then kind of maybe go talk a little bit on some of these big games from last weekend, how that kind of maybe affected the rankings, and then kind of look forward. I'm not going to do like picks. I'm hoping to still do a separate video going through my picks for all these games with some people who are experts a little bit more on each of these conferences. So look out for that later here in the week. So sorry, my camera is annoying me how it's positioned. All right, there we go. So coming in number 1, Ohio State, Indiana number 2, last 2 undefeated teams playing this weekend in the Big Ten Championship. Didn't expect that to change. It didn't. Georgia then jumps up to 3, as well as Texas Tech, Oregon, and Ole Miss, all jumping up 1 spot to 4, 5, and 6, respectively. A&M, after their loss to Texas, drops all the way to the bottom of all these 11-1 teams to 7th. Then this is where things get kind of interesting. I think this is kind of funny. So, because you can see, it's like clear separation. Okay, the 2 12-0 teams are at the top. Then it's the 5 11-1 teams. Then you have 3 10-2 teams. Oklahoma at 10-2. Alabama jumps up 1 spot to 9th after their win against Auburn in the Iron Bowl. And then Notre Dame falls 1 spot to 10th. But then all those 2-loss teams are ahead of 11-1 BYU, who will have a chance to play their way into the field. And I guess that's where we're getting some drama here this week is, okay, BYU can play themselves in with a Big 12 title win. And then Miami's at 12. Then you go to 13. Texas 13, despite being 9-3. However, they did beat A&M this past week, and they beat Vanderbilt on the field, who's 10-2. But why, if Texas, who has a worse record, but we're valuing the head-to-head win against Auburn or against Vanderbilt, are we giving them the spot ahead? Kind of doesn't make sense to me. Utah drops down 2 spots. I kind of saw that coming. They're kind of, I would just kind of say pretty much everyone below Miami, pretty much everyone below BYU is done. So you kind of see the rest of it there. I guess the other interesting spot, Virginia at 17th. They're in the ACC championship game against Duke, who's unranked. However, the American title game, we're looking at Tulane, who's be number 20th at 10-2. Only 2 losses only 2 losses total, only 1 coming in conference. Their other loss is a loss to Ole Miss, who's a playoff team. And then North Texas at 24th, who's also 11-1. Only loss was to USF, who has beat some SEC teams, or just one, I guess. But, USF was a good team. And then James Madison finally cracks the ranking at 25th at 11-1 here. Their only loss was to Louisville. So let's first kind of go through some of the games from last week. Just kind of talk about that a little bit. Andre, Me26, dropping a Shoot DaRock. What's up, Andre? Good to see you, my man. Feel free to, if you guys are watching here live on Twitch, drop your takes. So just kind of going through some of the results from this weekend. Like I mentioned, the big one, Texas. They beat Texas A&M 27-17. And there has been a lot of discourse around Texas because, okay, now they've beaten the number 3 ranked team in the country. They're 9-3, but it's like if they didn't play Ohio State and they play someone else, they're 10-2. They should be in. And in all honesty, yeah, if Texas was 10-2, they would probably be in because they beat Oklahoma. They, like I said, they're ahead of Vanderbilt now because they beat Vanderbilt. But I just think there's a lot of flawed reasoning in that, or a flawed logic in that reasoning of, oh, if Texas doesn't get in, they shouldn't play Ohio State. They shouldn't play anyone anymore. And I'm going to pull up why here. I'm going to pull up Texas's schedule. So as you can see, they lose that opening game to Ohio State, but then, they beat a bunch of cupcakes. They then lose to Florida, which then drops them out of the rankings before then the next week, they beat Oklahoma. But then what I really think is, these next two games, UC after Oklahoma, they win in overtime against Kentucky and Mississippi State, teams that are bottom of the SEC. Then, did they sneak out a nice win against Vandy after that? Yep. Close game. Vandy came back. Texas holds on. But then they lost to Georgia, and it was just never a close game. And I don't know how, it's just the ESPN SEC propaganda machine. Some of the announcers were trying to, say, this week that, Texas, played Georgia close. No, they didn't. They lost 35-10. That game was a blowout. So, does Texas have some pretty nice wins here? Yes, but they're not being punished for losing to Ohio State. They're being punished for losing to Florida, for barely squeaking by Kentucky and Mississippi State. And that's the thing. If instead of Ohio State, they just play another cupcake, I don't know why Rice is the one people keep throwing out, but Rice, who knows? Maybe they fall off a cliff like that. Look at Penn State. Penn State played nobody, and then they lost to Oregon, and it all just fell apart. So just because Texas doesn't play Ohio State, it's not just okay, then they beat Rice. I don't know, maybe then they lose the Kentucky game. Maybe they lose Mississippi State. Maybe because they haven't been, tested and backs against the wall after the Florida loss, maybe they don't beat Oklahoma. There's just a lot of what ifs that I just don't think it's just definitive of Texas should just don't play anybody. And that's the thing. For example, I'm mentioning Vanderbilt here. Vanderbilt's 10-2. But they didn't play anybody in their non-conference. They don't have any signature wins. Outside of these SEC Glazers, no one is advocating that Vanderbilt should be in. And they're 10-2. They're not going to be in. Just because you're 10-2 doesn't necessarily mean you're going to be in. It kind of depends on who you beat. Vanderbilt, they lost their two big games. Granted, nice win against Tennessee this week. 45-24 win. Just cruise. First 10-win season in Vanderbilt history. It's a very good season for Vanderbilt. But I'm saying here, we'll pull up their schedule real quick. They're 10-2. No one's advocating really for them to be in because their wins are against Charleston Southern, Virginia Tech, Georgia State, and Utah State. They played nobody. And then their bigger games, they lost. They lost to Alabama. They lost to Texas. Nice win against Tennessee. South Carolina was ranked 11th at the time, but South Carolina didn't even make a bowl game. They're not actually good. Missouri was, again, ranked at the time. Thank God they weren't ranked this week. Missouri didn't beat a single bowl-eligible team this year. So you can maybe give Vandy some ranked wins, but that's the thing. If Vandy, say, schedules a Indiana or someone, and again, I'm not saying this is on Vandy because, Indiana's been very outright of, they're not scheduling people. They're going to do the SEC schedule, and that's almost where I would love to see, this week, we're watching here these ACC SEC challenge games. I would love to see something like that for football. I think that could be pretty cool. A Big Ten SEC challenge where every year you're playing, you're getting Ohio State, Texas, but then you're also getting, Alabama, Indiana, Georgia, Michigan, games like that. So that would be a lot of fun. CFB playoff is going to be fun. I agree. It is going to be very fun. Other kind of notable results. Oklahoma sneaks by LSU. That's the thing. Oklahoma, I don't necessarily know if they should just be a lock in, but they didn't. They won in Alabama, so that game is doing a lot of heavy lifting, especially here. Then if Alabama wins the SEC, beats Georgia again, it is a bit of these teams they're cannibalizing each other, which I just kind of laugh in the SEC. That means we have to put all these teams in rather than, any other conference. It's all that, the ACC, the conference sucks. And that's the thing. I don't know, say Oklahoma lose. If Oklahoma didn't hold on to that game, say Auburn wins the Iron Bowl, there was a path for Texas to be in, but the results they needed just didn't happen. Another result they probably would have needed to happen, well, one that they did get that I just want to touch on here as a Buckeye fan, Ohio State just destroys Michigan 27-9, and that game was just so funny. Michigan did a better job defending their midfield logo after the game than they did actually playing defense all season or all game. Like, they had a nice run to start. They get the interception. There is a bit of part of me that's like, oh shit, here we go again. Michigan's going to beat Ohio State again. And then just Ohio State proved why they're the best team in the country. And a lot of people have been saying, oh, Ohio State hasn't played anyone. They might actually be that good. They beat Texas. They can't help that Penn State fell off. Like, they beat who they've been supposed to beat. They've looked very good. It's going to be a real test against Indiana next week, though. I will say that. Indiana also, big win over their rival, destroying Purdue 56-3. So I'm very excited to that game. We can kind of transition now to these conference games. I guess one last one I do want to touch on. More not for the game, more for just the other ramifications. Ole Miss beats Mississippi State 38-19. And that was going to be the last game that Lane Kiffin coached at Ole Miss. He is now leaving for LSU. Honestly, it was pretty predictable. When, it's getting dragged out for that long, like if he was just going to stay at LSU, he would have just announced, or stay at Ole Miss, I'm sorry, it would have just been announced he's staying at Ole Miss. Like once it was like Marty Smith is just living in the facility, he's been there for over a day, trying to find things out. Like it was very clear that he was just trying to negotiate, like coaching the playoff and, who in his staff is going to come with him to LSU kind of thing. And that's just like the thing too. It's like, Ole Miss is in the right. He should not get to coach them in the playoff. If Lane Kiffin wants to coach Ole Miss in the playoff, you know what he could have done? Signed his extension and stayed at Ole Miss. And honestly, like, seeing how the whole fiasco with Brian Kelly went down at LSU, I think Ole Miss is in a better spot than LSU at this moment. Ole Miss beat LSU this year. Like, this is always just so funny to me. These, like, coaches that leave within conference where it's like, why? You're at a better spot. Sure, maybe, like every top Louisiana recruit wants to go to LSU, so maybe you have that a little bit more than like the top kids in Mississippi, but I don't know, just like he's really kind of built something at Ole Miss. Like they're 11-1, they finally like find their way into the playoff. They lose to Georgia this year, but they didn't have a collapse like last year where they lost to Florida and stuff like that. So it's just very funny, very Lane Kiffin. I mean, he's had kind of burning bridge departures everywhere he's left, so I guess, credit to him. He gets more money. He thinks he can maybe do more recruiting-wise. But this Ole Miss team that he's leaving is a very good team, and I'm glad they didn't get punished for him leaving. Honestly, with the whole Jordan Travis, Florida State stuff a couple years ago, I wasn't really sure if that was going to happen, or they were then maybe going to try to bounce out Ole Miss for like a bunch of these teams who Ole Miss has literally beat. So let's pull that up quick here, the bracket. So as it stands right now, and I like that they did this, Ohio State number 1, Indiana number 2, Georgia number 3, Texas Tech number 4. I think if obviously only one of Indiana or Ohio State's going to win. I think whoever wins that game is going to be number 1. And then whoever Georgia and Texas Tech take care of business, they'll stay in those slots. It'll pretty much look the same. Then we got 5 Oregon's going to take on the 5th conference champions. So like I said, I like that they did that rather than just like slotting Miami into the field like they've done for weeks, even though Miami's really had no shot of making it, which we can get into in a sec. So yeah, that's then 8-9. We have Oklahoma, Alabama again, this time in Norman, which I guess, Oklahoma beat them in Tuscaloosa. So I guess now they get a chance in Norman. Ole Miss is number 6 against whoever's a conference champ there. And then A&M, Notre Dame, once again, 7-10 this time. Similar thing to Oklahoma, Alabama, where first time was in South Bend. This time would be in College Station since A&M won. So I think that's kind of funny. So yeah, let's just kind of look through here these conference championships. Like I said, James Madison, if they win Friday night, they're going to become very big Duke fans. The Dukes are going to be cheering for Duke. As you can see, they're 23.5-point favorites against Troy. I guess maybe even if it's like a close game, like they're going to have to cover that spread, I think. If they cover that spread and Duke wins, they should be in the playoff. And the other big one, Friday night, is North Texas Tulane. As you can see there, both teams are ranked. Like I said, I'll get into these predictions a little bit more. Just kind of more here going through the scenarios. Like the winner of that's going to be the either 11 or 12 seeds. So they're either going to Eugene or Oxford. Tulane's already played in Oxford this year too, I believe. So that'd be kind of crazy for them to go back, but is what it is. And then I guess maybe somehow by a miracle, UNLV Boise State, if UNLV wins, which that too, the whole Mountain West like being the matchup because there was like a 4-way tie, and then they used some computer metrics. Just seemed kind of silly to me, but here we are. So maybe if Troy somehow beats James Madison, or like it's a close game, and then I would say like if UNLV wins and Duke wins, maybe UNLV could still sneak in, but I highly doubt it. Then here we go on to Saturday. So 11 a.m. BYU Texas Tech is going to be the big one, where if BYU wins, they should be in. Really, I think right now BYU should be in no matter what, but at least this adds a little bit more drama to conference championship week, where BYU wins, they're in. And then, like I said, it gets interesting there. That's the thing, too, is like Texas Tech should be in regardless. I don't really know how you can drop them from 4 to then 11 for losing to be, like, flip these teams essentially for them losing. That would just be kind of crazy in my opinion. But I don't know, like Texas Tech, they don't want to put themselves in that situation. And it's going to be, so like they're still going to be going to win this game. BYU needs to win to get in. Like I said, they should be in anyways, but they're not going to be. And then we got Alabama, Georgia, where that one, I mean, like, let's be honest here. The winner of that game is getting a bye. Like, and honestly, if it's Alabama who wins, they might both get a bye. I would hate to see that, especially if Texas Tech wins. But like they're not going to not give the winner of the SEC a bye. Like, what are we talking about here? I think some of the people that are suggesting that are just kind of crazy. Georgia is favored, but I don't know. Alabama just kind of owns Georgia late. They already beat them this year, so we'll see. Like I said, I'll get into these predictions in a different video later this week, but I think that should be a good one. And then 7 Eastern, we have Ohio State, Indiana. Like I said, winner's going to be the 1 seed. I think the loser, if Georgia wins, the loser will get jumped. But honestly, I really hope it's not. I really hope they don't get jumped by more than to third. Because I feel like these two teams are both 12-0. And that's the thing where almost like these conference championship games are almost like pointless for some of these teams now that it's like, which again, I think seeding wise, it makes sense. Just seed them 1 through 12 rather than last year where it was like kind of goofy. But like I said, the win, and for conference pride, obviously you want to win this game, but it's kind of like goofy where this game's probably a little kind of meaningless on like who wins the national championship. So that's where I'm hoping like whoever loses just gets bumped down to third rather than fourth, where then they could potentially play again in the national championship rather than the semifinals, because I think that's kind of what they've earned. And then get into juice box questions. So wait, is it JMU in or the winner of the American? That's where I think things get interesting. Duke, Virginia. Duke is 7-5 in the conference championship game because they lost all their like non-con games kind of thing. I want to say that's right because, yeah, they lost to Illinois. They lost to Tulane. Did they lose their other? I want to say they lost their other non-conference game, and they've only lost 2 ACC games. And that's just like the crazy thing here with the ACC, and where I think we're going to see some changes for next year. Yeah, lost to Illinois, Tulane, and UConn. And then in conference lost to Georgia Tech and Virginia. I think that's where we're going to see some different things here. As you can kind of see, or it's blocked. Let me move the chat to the other side here real quick. Maybe you can't see super well, but Virginia went 7-1 in conference, but then SMU, Miami, Pitt, Georgia Tech, and Duke all went 6-2. But by some like strength of record tiebreaker, which I'm pretty sure came down to a game between Boston College and Syracuse this weekend, like to determine who had the better strength of record, Duke wins the tiebreaker. And that's all this, talk, which again, Notre Dame or Miami should be ahead of Notre Dame because they beat Notre Dame on the field. And it's very clear, like, with neither of those teams playing this weekend, that's going to change. But, like, the ACC, in all honesty, is just, like, doing themselves a disservice. And granted, no, I don't think they can just change the rules mid-season like some reporters were suggesting they should do. But, like, it could have been very easily just Virginia-Miami for the championship. And also the funny thing is, like, Virginia's 7-1 in conference. Their out-of-conference loss was a game to NC State, but it wasn't, for some reason they were able to schedule it as like a non-con game, which I just think is funny. So it's going to come down to, do they want to put in a 7-5 Duke team if Duke knocks off Virginia? And granted, this is a very big like hypothetical. If Virginia wins, they're in. They're not going to keep Virginia out. They're currently ranked ahead of James Madison, North Texas, and Tulane. So that's where your question here, Juice Box. If Virginia wins, they're in, and then I just think it's whoever wins the American between North Texas and Tulane is in. However, if Duke wins, I have a hard time seeing them putting an 8-5 Duke team in, especially one that's currently unranked, while JMU finally got ranked. So if JMU takes care of business, I think and Duke wins, I think there is a very good chance we see the ACC just completely left out of the playoff, which, like I said, is then going to result in, I think, tiebreakers where it's going to be like head-to-head and then just like some sort of either CFP ranking or granted, I was listening to the Cover 3 podcast and they were like the ones kind of suggesting this, but then like, you wouldn't know until today who is then playing in the ACC championship game between all those teams, where then it would be like the highest ranked one. So it ends up being like Virginia, Miami, or like BCS like metric where it's like, in all honesty, the ACC just didn't do themselves any favors. I'm glad they didn't like change the game mid-season here, change the rules to get Miami in. But in all honesty, like, what are we doing here? We have 7-5 Duke in rather than Miami, our highest ranked team in our conference, because of some goofy tiebreakers. Because all these conferences just have way too many teams now. Like, it's just kind of ridiculous. They need to figure out some way to make it like bring back divisions or do like 4 divisions, something where the tiebreakers just aren't what they are. So go back to the bracket here real quick. So like I said, we're looking at, I think if BYU wins, excuse me, they're in, Notre Dame's out. If not, if Texas Tech wins, then we're probably just looking at the same top 4. The only other major movement would be, like I said, if Alabama beats Georgia, I think they jump into the top 4. And then probably Georgia goes down to 5, and everyone like flips down. Like Georgia goes down to like 5 or 6, and everyone else flips down one spot. See, that's the thing though too. Like I wouldn't really want them. I don't like think these teams that are sitting at home should be able to jump teams that are playing this weekend that lose, kind of thing. So I think like if Georgia loses to Alabama, they should be 5, and then everyone else slots down 1. And then yeah, like I said, we're either looking at Ole Miss is going to play either the winner of the American or Virginia, and then Oregon's either going to play the winner of the American or James Madison. So I think those will be some fun matchups. Juicebox says he wants BYU in. I agree. Like I said, they're 11-1. Their only loss to Texas Tech. They have ranked wins over teams like Miami. Let me just pull up BYU's schedule here real quick. I just like I said, you can look at it right here. It's like funny. They have the 12-0 teams group, then they all have all the 11-1 teams. And then all of a sudden, weirdly, it's, okay, 10-2 teams, but, there's an 11-1 team in there, and then, there's a 10-2 team in there that beat one of these other teams they're ahead of. But then, the 9-3 team that beat the 10-2 team is ahead. So, yeah, they just kind of pick and choose what they want to do, and I just find that to be very funny. So, yeah, looking at BYU's schedule here, like I said, did Texas Tech beat them pretty handily? Yes. But they have... And, do they have a great non-conference game? No. And that's why, like I said, I think these teams do need to schedule better non-conference opponents. I don't think the take should be, we're 9-3, so let's schedule nobody. Because it gives you a chance to get a kind of signature non-conference win. However, last year, BYU kind of got screwed because they beat, but that too was just like an SMU was in the conference championship. That's why SMU was in, and BYU, who beat them, was not. But yeah, Utah was ranked. Utah's still ranked. Texas Tech, like I said, that was their only loss. Arizona, I guess, was a double overtime game. So like, they've had some close calls. Cincinnati's been ranked at points. I don't believe they are anymore. So I don't know. It just seems like they kind of pick and choose. And honestly, which granted I don't feel bad because that's a lot of teams are doing this, but like BYU legitimately would just be better off being like independent this year. I feel like if BYU was like 11-1. And just could kind of cherry pick their schedule like how Notre Dame does. Or if BYU was still in the Mountain West like they were before they were independent, they would probably be in the playoff this year. And granted, then you can do the same thing like, Texas Tech's in the Big 12, they're probably in the playoff this year. And, these schools are the ones that have, they're the ones they want more money. They leave those conferences for better conferences, so I don't really have a ton of sympathy for that. But yeah, I don't really think that, just like I said, it's mainly just like Texas. I can't stand the whining from Texas fans of, we shouldn't have scheduled Ohio State because, like, look at that. Notre Dame, even though they didn't even win those games, but so far their resume is like, they played tough non-conference games and played close games. So, and then they've won 10 straight games, which I think is just silly that they get the benefit of, they've been playing really well lately, which they have, but also they're not in a conference. They're the only team in the country that can do that can put their 2 toughest games at the beginning of their schedule, and then after that, their best win's USC. And like they killed Pitt was ranked at the time, but their coach literally even just like said that game doesn't matter because they can't win the ACC. So I guess that's just kind of my closing points here. Is I don't think just because your team gets left out for losing your non-conference game. I mean, look at Oklahoma this year. Oklahoma played a tough game. I think that's another reason why Oklahoma's in. They played Michigan and they beat Michigan, so now they're 10-2. Michigan, you're looking here, they're 9-3. Say, like, Michigan wins that game, they're in. No one's, like, that's the thing. Everyone's like, oh, Texas, they should be in. They played a tough. No one's saying Michigan should be in because, they lost to Oklahoma in the non-conference. They should have played no. Like, no one's saying that for Michigan, so I don't understand why it's a thing for Texas but not for Michigan then. Arizona is still ranked. So, like, BYU has good wins. They beat two teams who are ranked. Granted, like I said, they lost Texas Tech, but yeah, BYU should just be in my opinion, over Notre Dame. I guess really, like, in my thought, it should be like, I feel like you then argue between like Oklahoma, Alabama, Notre Dame, Miami for that last spot. But I guess this provides a little bit of value. The problem is what Bama is doing, killing the game we love with cupcakes. So I agree, and that's the thing I think a lot of these SEC teams are now just going to take is they're going to be like, oh, let's just not play anybody in the non-conference, so we go into conference play undefeated, and then if we suffered 2 or 3 losses in conference, being like, oh, but we lost to good teams, we should still be in. So I don't know. I hope they don't take that route, but who knows. All right, so that's going to wrap it up. Thank you guys so much for watching. Make sure, like I said at the start of the video, let me know your takes, who you think should be in, who you think's winning these conference championship games this weekend. It's a really good time of year for college football, so definitely be doing some more videos talking about, these playoff games and how all these different games kind of affect the rankings going forward. So definitely we'll do a reaction next week after these championship games. And if you want to hop on the show, talk about any of these games, make sure to let me know in the comments. While you're down there, make sure to like the video. Check out all my other socials where I'm dropping my takes. Tuesday's a big day for college basketball, so I was tweeting a lot about the different basketball games. Was watching those games live on my Twitch channel, so make sure to check out all my different socials. Appreciate you guys watching. I'll see y'all next time. Peace.